Welcome to Inside Alberta. I'm business columnist Chris Farco with the Calgary Herald, joined by political columnist Don Braid. Don, it's been a busy week in the pipeline battle between British Columbia and Alberta. And today's topic is all about the War of the Roses. And we've seen the Battle of the Bitumen escalate over the last few days. The BC government of John Horgan has tried to put limits in place on how much bitumen can move into the province. Premier Rachel Notley retaliated with a ban on BC wines. I guess I'm wondering, what is the political strategy at play here, Don?
The Alberta political strategy is not quite what people think. The ban is supposed to hurt BC's economy, right? But BC isn't really the target. Ottawa's the target. Alberta and Rachel Notley were finally trying to get Ottawa's attention in a very serious way, and it has worked. Because ever since they put the ban down, there have been talks between officials.
I have had discussions with the Prime Minister. I have had discussions with the Premier of Alberta.
Notley has talked to Horgan. Notley has talked to the Prime Minister. Horgan has talked to the Prime Minister. Officials have raced back and forth. And even now, over the weekend, they're talking about this. And we may see something fairly soon. But as a political strategy, most people did, I think, in Alberta, like what Notley did, because it kind of poked a sharp stick, but there was a deeper game than that, and it was to get Ottawa's attention. Chris, you had a really interesting conversation with the CEO of Kinder Morgan this week, I thought. How are they feeling about it, and how important is that, do you think?
Yeah, I spoke with Ian Anderson. He's the president of Kinder Morgan Canada this week, and it was the first time they've really spoken out since this ban was put in place by the Horgan government a week ago. And I would say that there's two things going on here. Number one is they're frustrated. They're deeply frustrated. And they say very clearly, they know the game is to frustrate and delay and make more uncertainties so that their investors will, start to get nervous.
We view those as tools that the BC government is attempting to use to frustrate and delay the project. We're questioning whether or not they have any jurisdiction whatsoever to take the actions that they contemplate.
And they say that they are reluctant to really get going on the spending until they know they can get this project completed. By the same token, they say, they are not close to pulling the pin on the project. They are still committed. They're spending $1.5 billion on the project this year. And they think they've got the angels on their side, which is the rule of law. So much like the Notley government, they're calling on the federal government to state very unequivocally what's going to happen here if BC tries to move ahead.
Yeah.
So I think that they've put the path forward, and their path is on exactly the same path as Alberta. So Don, what are you waiting to see in the next few days on the political track between these two provinces and the federal government, and the provinces not being able to get along? What's the keys?
Well, as I said before, there are things going on. There's a chance that this is going to crack the logjam. In fact, I even heard a hint just at the end of the week that there may be some kind of settlement in the works. And I've been told that very clearly, that because the BC people overstepped, something went wrong there. There's one theory is that George Hayman, the environment minister, didn't have the full approval of the premier, who was away in Asia, and who, by the way, his brother had just passed away. In fact, there's a memorial service for John Horgan's brother on the weekend. So there was all kinds of other stuff going on, and maybe this idea of a ban on the extra bitumen was just going too far. So right now, as I read it, Ottawa is trying to put together some kind of compromise where Alberta will obviously take down the ban and BC will give something on this future bitumen ban. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw it by Monday, because on Tuesday next week, Horgan goes into the House for his first big legislature session. He doesn't want to be dealing with this in that legislature. So federal cabinet ministers had a lot to say this week. They fanned out when the new regulations were introduced, and I know you talked to Jim Carr at length. So what are they contributing to this? Are they indicating any change of direction, any more firmer policy from Ottawa?
Well, there's some curious timing here. As you point out, Minister Carr and Minister McKenna federally have introducing a new policy which would really regulate pipelines and how pipelines are developed, or if pipelines ever get developed in this country. But overriding much of that was, what are you going to do if British Columbia decides to move ahead with these proposed regulations? And of course, these are only proposals. There's nothing firmly in place. It's a bit of a phantom menace.
That's what's so sneaky about it, actually.
Right, and I mean, it's a brilliant strategy, because there's nothing for them to be, legally challenged, that the BC government is. But Minister Carr, said the message, which is this pipeline's going to get built. They're not going to let BC usurp federal jurisdiction. But then the question is, well, how are you going to go about doing that? And that's where we really saw him, stick handle around the issue. The bottom line is Ottawa doesn't want to say what they're going to do. And I think they want to keep those cards close to their vest. I also think they want to keep the temperature as low as they possibly can. You know, there's obviously, you know, big legislative hammer that they could pull out if they needed to, but I think that's too early. I think at this stage of the game, as you say, they want to get everybody together, they want to cool the temperature down and try and get a resolution. Exactly. I'm less optimistic that we're going to see that happen than you are, but I guess we'll find out in the next week.
It's one of the hottest things I've seen since the 80s on the interprovincial front, when we had the big battles with Ottawa. This is really something, and people are very engaged with it.
Well, Don, we're going to have a lot to be watching for in the next few days. Stay tuned for next week.
We will.